So it is really a pleasure to be here. I wanted to tell you a little bit about CoMotion. CoMotion, I like to think of, is the one-stop innovation hub for the University of Washington. And what we are in the business of doing is turning ideas and discoveries into impact. So we do that through a set of interconnected services at the University of Washington. It starts talking with researchers and developing innovation training programs so that they can start about making a difference through translation and commercialization rather than simply publishing papers. We help them secure intellectual property, and we help them move forward into licensing this property into existing companies or building spin-outs of their own. And so we place mentors and advisors at the right time, we make investment in these companies, and we provide all the advice and everything that they need to eventually spin out. And when they do so, we incubate them in one of our 3 incubators. So today, we're going to talk about innovation in the battery space, and more specifically, in the battery manufacturing space. And it is a real pleasure to welcome 3 top leaders of the, I would say, world-leading battery manufacturing company. We have Birger Steen, who will be online and joining us a few minutes, but also Felix Grunewald from Northvolt, as well as Hovig from Corvus Energy. If you want to, please join me on the stage. So I think that we'll take a cue from the previous panel, and I will sit here. And I think that Birger will be appearing on the big screen soon. The video typically works. Okay. There we go.
Oh man, that is a really big screen.
It is. Birger, thanks for joining us. We know that you wanted to be here in person, and we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. So I'm going to start by asking the 3 folks to actually tell us a little bit about their companies. You guys operate very different companies that have very different missions, very different market segments, and very different battery technologies. But what our audience probably would like to know, I certainly would, is to know your secret sauce. So what is a differentiator and what makes you unique? So we're going to start with Birger, who is going to tell us a little bit about FREYR. Birger, take it away.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so FREYR was started about 6 years ago with a mission to decarbonize energy storage and mobility by producing the most sustainable batteries in the world. And we wanted to do that in the place in the world with perhaps the highest percentage of renewable power, up in Mo i Rana in Norway, so just about on the Arctic Circle, up there on the coast. Mo i Rana is a proud old industrial community. The Edison Mining Syndicate started up there in 1906, and they've been one of the engines of industry in Norway ever since then. The largest ironworks was built up there after the war. And then they learned what happens when technology and industries change in 1990, when the ironworks was closed and overnight 2,000 good paying industrial jobs disappeared. So this is a place that really knows how to appreciate industrial innovation and new creation. Unfortunately, they got a taste of that kind of disruption again, because we started building our gigafactory there, and we are building gigafactories for production of lithium iron phosphate batteries. Those are not the highest performing ones that you'll put in perhaps in a sort of top Tesla or sports type of EV, but they're somewhat safer, last somewhat longer, somewhat cheaper to produce. And also very, very good for electric storage systems that you can use to stabilize the grid or to save electricity from wind farms and solar farms when the wind's not blowing or the sun's not shining. And also, of course, if you're an end user of electricity and you want to buy power when it's cheap and not when you need it. So what happened after we'd gotten about halfway to building our gigafactory in Mo i Rana was this brilliant piece of new legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act became law. We spent a little bit of time having a conversation with the Norwegian government, which arguably is one of the few governments in the world who could really afford to do something similar. And it became clear that they were not going to. So we actually didn't see any other option than to reorient our gigafactory construction to the US because of the brute force attraction of the Inflation Reduction Act. And just to put it in context, it costs about $8 per kilowatt hours in the West to build a lithium ion battery. Costs probably $30 less in China. And the Inflation Reduction Act gives you $35 of production tax credits for each kilowatt hour. So basically, it puts you on competitive footing with the terawatt scale Chinese who have been at this game for about a decade longer than we have through this production tax credit. So it's a very, very strong signal. And it comes in the form of a tax credit that you get until 2032. So as such, it also contains a little bit of an exploding end, so that you better get started quick. It's every day we don't have a factory in Covina, Georgia, which is where we're building, cost about $1.6 million in lost profit because the IRA PTCs actually end. So that's what we're doing now. We have a piece of land in Covina, Georgia. It's about 45 minutes south of Hartfield-Jackson. A great area for connectivity, obviously. We're going to have to fly people in from Europe, from Asia, and also a good place, second perhaps only to the Pacific Northwest, in terms of access to talent and local support. So FREYR is now an American battery company. We re-domiciled to the US, and we're building our first gigafactory there. Hopefully, we'll be able to come back to Europe and start building again in Norway when the boundary conditions for production in Europe equalize through tariffs, through support, or simply because trade patterns even out. But that's not going to be in the first couple of years for sure.
Thank you. Felix.
Right. So I'm at Northvolt. Northvolt is I would say a European-based or a Nordic-based incumbent and the first mover in Europe. We were founded in 2016. Today we're 6,000 employees, a little more. We are 120 nationalities, so we've been recruiting globally since the start. We're fully built out, planned capacities more than 200 gigawatt hours, and in car equivalents, that's a little more than 2 million cars per year. We're building currently, expanding. We have a gigafactory already built up in Skellefteå in Sweden. This is expanding and continuously expanding. We are building a gigafactory in Gothenburg together with our partner Volvo Cars there. And we're building one factory in Germany, northern Germany, and one in Canada, in Montreal. Those are the gigafactories. We have an industrialization lab in Västerås in Sweden, and we also have a technology company we invested in San Francisco, which is more aviation geared. So we have three cell technologies mainly. One is sodium ion. That's more the grid application. Then we have the more traditional NMC technology, which is similar to what Tesla is using. And then we also have lithium metal anodes, which is the San Francisco-based company. And this is much higher cell density, so application would be more sports cars or aviation. What's our secret sauce? I guess, our mission is to produce the greenest battery on Earth. But we also are very vertically integrated, meaning we have our cells, but we also do systems. We also produce our own cathode material, and we have our own recycling. So that's part of the secret sauce of Northvolt.
Super. Thank you. Tor?
Yeah, so I work for, does it work? Yeah, Corvus Energy. We are a manufacturer of battery energy storage system for the maritime sector. I would say 95% of our business is in the maritime sector. We were founded in 2009, actually in Vancouver, BC, but we currently have moved our head office to Birger, Norway, back in 2018. The last couple of years, we have also introduced hydrogen fuel cell to our portfolio, and some of you may have heard yesterday when my colleague Sven Ødegaard presented on that. We are the largest battery manufacturer for the maritime space globally. Today we have more than 800 ships sailing with our battery, either in a fully electric or in a hybrid configuration, which gives us more than a 50% market share globally. So we are manufacturing, obviously, in Bergen, where we have our absolutely biggest factory. We are also in Vancouver with a factory, and in 2022 we decided to open a factory here in Washington State. So we are present here and we love it. So we were the first to introduce batteries on ships, and we were also first on many vessel segments, tugs, ferries, cruise vessels, offshore supply vessels, etc. And I want to mention we were also the first one to do a fully electric ferry in Norway back in 2015, which have now sailed an equivalent of 8 times around the equator and is still sailing with the same batteries. So what is our sauce, secret sauce? It's a tricky question. I think it's nothing super exciting, but I think we have a very strong maritime DNA. A lot of people working in our company come from different parts of the maritime sector, which have given us an advantage that we definitely benefit from. We understand the customer, we know the customer, we know what the customer expects, and we know what we have to supply. So another important thing, at least yesterday's presentations, I heard a lot of talk about the clusters, and the same we have in the maritime. In Norway, we have the maritime cluster, which have been significant influencer on driving the green transition. And I have to say, without the cluster, we would probably not have been as successful as we have been. And I live in Seattle, and I'm super excited that here a few years ago, it was established the Washington Maritime Blue, which is also a cluster organization based on the same principles as the Norwegian clusters, and it's also an incubator for startups. It's a very exciting environment. It brings together all the players and certainly have an influence on how policies are developing. So in the clusters we say cooperate when you can, compete when you must. So it's like an understanding with everybody who's members. That's how we play.
That's great, Tor. And if you can accelerate the adoption of electric ferry by the state of Washington, this is something that we all look forward to. You've heard about it.
We too. Yeah.
So, I like to continue. Battery manufacturing is a difficult occupation compared to other type of manufacturing. Manufacturing is never easy, but battery manufacturing is fraught with even more peril. The cost has to be low, but there are some problems. There are some problems with mineral availability. For example, your lithium might not be available, and therefore you may have to work with earth-abundant materials. Things are changing geopolitically all of the time, and this is causing issues and problems, and essentially the need to pivot for many of you guys. When you think about a site at which you are going to build your new gigafactory, you need to think about the people that are going to be there and how you drop in this particular location. And battery technologies are evolving all of the time, much like photovoltaics did about 10 to 15 years ago, and still. So, how do you figure out how to run a very successful manufacturing business and site it properly and operate it properly and be successful in being a large-scale battery manufacturer? Maybe we can start with Felix.
Sure. It's not easy, as you say, but a number of components. First, you need capital. You need both monetary capital. Northvolt has raised $15 billion to date, and we have an order book of around $55 billion. And then you need human capital. So that's why we have 120 nationalities. You need a broad reach. You need to recruit globally. You need battery experts, but you also need trained operators. So that's a must. On top of that, you need the right site, and that site it's an important selection, as Birger mentioned. Here, it's a large site, so it's normally there are 100 hectares, I guess 250 acres plus. You need access to energy, a good grid connection, and in our cases, you need green energy, and at least 250 megawatts and above. Then you need a very strong collaboration with the region itself, both on permits. You need the right stakeholders, management, and help with a lot of the questions. Just an example is from Skellefteå, our first site. We've gotten tremendous help from the municipality, extending the runway for the airport, building out the ports, laying new roads. It's a quite small city, so this was imperative.
So Northvolt made the decision to build in Canada, for example, as opposed to the US. What was the rationale behind that?
It was a very good site close to Montreal, and it was hydro energy, and Canada matched the IRA as well.
I see, excellent. Birger, would you like to add to that? I mean, you guys selected Georgia as the state that you are going to build your next gigafactory. Can you told us a little bit about this, but what were the incentives? What were the differentiation here? You may be muted.
Yeah, I'm sort of, what is it called? I'm occupying the reception in a hotel in the Latin Quarter in Paris. So I have people coming through here. It's the only place the Wi-Fi is good enough. Otherwise, not a bad place. Yeah, so Felix covered much of it. We were down to, we started with more than 100 sites in the US, and we got down to 20. And then I think in the final selection, it was the combination of the intersection between the railroad out to Savannah, the I-85 is a very good transport, very, very good location, access to a lot of talent and trainable talent in the neighborhood. I mean, we're going to have to educate 1,000 and more operators and bring in and get battery experts. It's something we had good experience with from Norway. We worked with the local authorities, regions, everything from trade school, apprenticeship programs, battery academy, we call it, and which is a partnership with the local high school and high schools in 4 other regions, and all the way up to 12.5 PhDs in the Norwegian Institute of Technology in Trondheim by now. So you sort of have to bring the what we call both the capability, the capacity, and the competitiveness. And the real challenge here, and we haven't really touched on the geopolitical aspects of it quite yet, but at least as it relates to lithium iron phosphate batteries, which is sort of the workhorse of this market with grid and also lower performing mobility. 95% of today's nameplate capacity for production of those batteries is in China. So if every region in the world is going to rely on batteries to help power the green transition, we really can't continue with that kind of single source dependency. We've sort of seen how that works with Taiwan through the chip shortage during COVID, and we've seen it in a couple of other scenarios. And that's, of course, why the IRA exists. It's why it's great that Northvolt continues steadfast with what they're doing in Europe, because Europe's going to need battery supplies in order to keep its auto industry going. But it's really important. It's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we succeed with this and partner with local communities, states, and federal authorities, as well as in the US, to secure the support for making this happen.
I was curious about the impact of the new lithium deposits that have been identified in northern Finland and some of the places. How long will it take before these come online?
Yeah, so we've been in conversations with Finnish Minerals Group, which is the Finnish state's investment company for that type of business. And they're I think in Europe, the Finns are really far out in the lead there. I'd love to have someone from them on stage next year, because it's one of those places where you see a lot less NIMBYism and a lot more forward-leaning attitude towards this than you perhaps see in some neighboring countries. None mentioned.
Yeah. Thank you. Tor, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, just, in Corvus, we are a little bit different than the other gentlemen here. We are actually buying our battery cells from companies like Felix and Birger here. We make the modules. We produce modules and we make systems for the maritime space. So obviously buying battery cells, it's a big challenge now with, like Birger said, 95% coming out of China. And the news yesterday, or was it this morning, I read Biden announced they're going to put big tariffs on Chinese imports. While that's a good thing, we also have to relate to it when we look at our supply chain. So it's great for us to see that more battery cell manufacturing is going to start in the US, and that will definitely help us going forward. When we look at where we put up our factories, it is very important, the green energy. All our factories today are in areas where we are basically 100% hydropower, and it kind of goes with the theme, so to say. We are working for a cleaner world, and we want our products to be supported by that. So closeness to market is very important to us, and also local incentives. So Inslee mentioned yesterday the CCA, we have the IRA. When we opened a factory here in Washington State, we actually got some grants from the state government here. And I'm not sure if it came from the CCA or not, but that doesn't matter. It's we did get some grants that helped us bridge the first step.
So I'm sorry. Is there anything unique about, you have a very specific sector, the maritime sector that you're working with. It seems to be a unique customer. You mentioned that this was an important part of your secret sauce, but what is idiosyncratic about the maritime sector as far as batteries are concerned, and how do you guys approach that? That's a hard sector to decarbonize.
So in the battery world now, it's in the maritime world, it's the development have gone very fast. It's I would say the industry has to change away from fossil fuels. And it's simply by regulation. IMO has set the target now by net zero emission by 2050. So operators have a big challenge because diesel is not an option. We heard yesterday from the hydrogen presentation that the biggest challenge is where do we bring fuel? Where do we bring hydrogen, ammonia, methanol? And for us, of course, the charging infrastructure had to come into play. So that is not in there yet. In a wide way. So this is a big challenge that where I feel government have to step in. A very success story is actually taken out of Norway, where the government introduced legislation that enforced electric operation of ferries. All the bids that have gone out the last year have been for fully electric ferries. And that creates stability, it creates predictability both for operators and for us as a supplier. We know that here is a market, and we know the infrastructure have to come into place. So it's a big joint effort actually to make this happen. But I think legislation have to make it predictable for operators, so they can safely make that investment that's going to last for 30 to 50 years. So they, yeah, for comfort level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking also about going back to land and the challenges that we face in terms of integration of battery power station and our current infrastructure, especially in the US, where the grid is aging and may not be capable of transmitting the needed energy at the times that is needed. Is it the same in Europe, and what is the political situation, and how is that affecting your decision or your ability to build this type of battery power station on land? And any one of you want to take a crack at that question?
Well, I can yeah. Birger, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tor. All right. Yeah, so some of you who were here last year might remember what was it, 2 years ago? We had Yaron Vista from Rystad Energy. They just published a report where they ranked European markets. I think the US was part of it, but as it relates to the attractiveness of using big battery banks as a basis for trading on short-term demand and supply fluctuations. And there's quite a big difference there. Norway is logically, and Sweden and Finland too to some extent, but Norway, some of the least attractive places on the planet to do it, because if we want to flex consumption and demand, we just turn off and on the water in the hydropower. Whereas if you have more nuclear and more gas, that has to operate at a certain constant capacity all the time to be thermodynamically optimized. So that's at least one consideration. The other consideration, I will say, my dad used to run the directorate that was looking after power lines in Norway for a few years. First time he came to visit me in Seattle, he almost had a stroke because he said, "This thing can't possibly work. If it snows here, this thing's all going to fall down," and he wasn't wrong, right?
Felix, would you like to add something to these comments? It's still working, Birger. We have a light.
Right? I just had to say, so we are mainly in maritime, but when it comes to land-based, we do have installations in ports, basically an installation that's associated with marine, but we are using vessels need charging, and we supply batteries for charging infrastructure, and we supply batteries for crane operation in ports. And we do notice that there is differences in legislation. Regulatory environment is very different from maritime, and there's more red tape you have to cut through, I would say, in the US compared to Europe. In Europe, I'm not sure if they have a closer link between the maritime regulatory and the land-based, but it seemed to be easier to adopt. In the US, we tend to run into a lot of red tape.
Indeed. Felix?
No, I think a lot said. I mean, the business cases can look quite different depending on markets. Obviously, I mean, even within Europe, so pricing of electricity is completely different between Sweden and Germany, for instance.
Yes.
And that kind of brings the whole peak shaving and level loading of the grid. That business case becomes very different.
Super. Well, I see that our time is up, and I had a question about gigafactories. When are we going to see terafactories?
I think Elon already announced that, right?
All right. Well, I want to thank you three again for taking the time to be part of this panel. This was a great conversation. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to the power of batteries in helping us decarbonize effectively. So thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.